Good morning, my peeps. I just wanted to share what would have been the salvation for the United States and the coronavirus had we had an actual politician president rather than a businessman. Now, I know that a lot of my fellow Americans who voted for Trump wanted him in there as a businessman, right, to run the place like a business, which you can't run a country that way. But let me go back to something that's very important that could have saved us from the pandemic. You see, back when Trump made his wonderful canceling of flights from China, which was awesome, wonderful, especially against the WHO's recommendation and everybody else's recommendations, it was wonderful. But the problem is because he wished so adamantly to keep his economy running, he let Chinese people in who were Americans, who had been to China and were going to come back home to work their jobs in America. As God knows what, spies are, I don't know, who knows, maybe just regular jobs. In any case, had he at the time said no flights from China at all, regardless of my economy, I'm not going to think about my economy as a businessman right now. I'm going to save my economy by actually shutting down all the airlines and all the flights from everywhere. Had he just stepped up and said no more flights from anywhere, shut down all the airports, we wouldn't have had imported cases from Europe, from China. So the very first moment where China was dealing with this, back in November, had I been the president, I would have shut down the airports and said we're going to prop up the airports later with bailouts, but the rest of the economy can function. That makes perfect sense, right? Nobody gets in who's got the virus. We keep people alive. We keep our economy running. The only thing we got to prop up is the airlines that we took down for a couple of months while we didn't let anybody fly into the country. Or even take in things from boats that might have given the virus, right? We put a total block on anything coming in. The one or two straggler cases that would have found their way in, immediately quarantine, contact trace. And it would not be to the epidemic proportion that it is right now. So again, to review, we cannot have a businessman running a country. Okay? Because a businessman will say, I will let 40,000 Chinese in to save my economy, even though it's a total risk to it. He risked all of our lives for this one little subset of 40,000 people he let in to go work their jobs and be part of the. How much really was it worth it to let that 40,000 people in to go work their jobs here in the United States, these Chinese citizens or who have dual citizenship or whatever, who were in China for whatever reasons and then came back over? Why? I would have shut down European flights, Chinese flights, everything. I would have shut down all of the airports back in November when China was saying there was a problem. And we today would be no doubt like Taiwan. Very few cases, very few problems, very little death. So we cannot have business people as the, nothing else works, so let's have business people run the country. That's just not right, man. That's just not right. You got to have a president who is business savvy, absolute, but a president puts the country first, right? So had I been the president, I would have said no flights in, shut down the airports back in November. We're not having your flights in. That would have kept the cases out. And then we could have dealt slowly with reopening airports and letting people in straight into screening. And that's would have been the only way to keep us safe. That's what should have been done. Now, I certainly applaud Trump for saying 40,000, letting only 40,000 in when there was a lot more could have been let in. Absolutely, that's wonderful. But he should have taken a step further. Should have just gone up against everybody and had the cojones enough to say, hey, look, I'm shutting down all the airports. I'm shutting down the shipping ports. I'm shutting down everything. Right? Just for a couple of months. We'll prop it back up. But in the meantime, restaurants, everything else could still function. All right, basically a closed economy for a couple of months. We're kind of sealed off from the world. That would have prevented this from happening. So, again, never again with the business people. I'm reading articles now about these 50-year-old Republican people that voted for Trump in this last election because they wanted a businessman in there. And now they're looking at his track record with the coronavirus and saying, man, that was probably not a good idea. And you know what? It was never a good idea in the first place. Like I've been saying, it was never a good idea to make China our number one trading partner when We have people at home that need jobs and work. That's never a good idea. And so I think that was the foundation of Trump's decision to allow 40,000 people in from China or God knows where else, when he could have just said, close down all the airports. Just wanted to share that, and I think that's the way to go. If there's ever a future of this problem, it's the way to go. Shut down all the airports immediately as soon as you know there's a problem in some other country. Don't assume it's not coming here. Don't assume it's going to go away. Don't assume it's not a problem. From now on, assume it's going to spread like wildfire and throw up your iron gates so the fire can't get in. And then when the world's done burning, you slowly let those iron gates a little bit down, slowly, one little bit at a time.